Most men don't fail with women because they lack looks, money, or charm. They fail because they do things that quietly destroy attraction before it ever has a chance to grow. And the worst part? No one tells you what those things are. You replay conversations in your head. You wonder why she pulled away. Why did her tone change? Why did the effort suddenly feel one-sided? You did what you thought was right. You were honest, available, respectful, consistent, yet somehow it worked against you. This isn't about tricks. It's not about manipulation, and it's definitely not about becoming someone you're not. It's about understanding how attraction actually responds to a man's behavior. Because there are a few actions, small on the surface, that signal weakness, neediness, or loss of self-respect without a single word being spoken. And once those signals are sent, desire doesn't argue. It fades. Most men double down when things go wrong. They explain more. Give more, chase harder. That only accelerates the damage. What you're about to hear isn't popular advice. It won't flatter you, but it will free you. These are not rules to control women. They are principles to control yourself. 5 things men should never do with women, not because women are bad, but because your self-respect matters more than approval. If you've ever felt confused, overlooked, or slowly minimized in a connection, this video will feel uncomfortably familiar. And once you see these patterns, you'll never unknowingly repeat them again. Attraction is not built on effort alone. It's built on emotional positioning. Most men believe relationships are about what you do for a woman. How much you give, how available you are, how hard you try to prove your value. But psychology shows something very different. Women don't connect deeply to what a man gives. They connect to who a man is while giving, your emotional center, your boundaries. Your ability to remain grounded in yourself, especially when things feel uncertain. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men never hear. The moment you abandon your inner stability to gain a woman's approval, the dynamic shifts. Not because she's cruel, but because attraction requires polarity. Strength doesn't mean dominance. Confidence doesn't mean arrogance. It means self-possession. When a man is calm inside himself, he creates emotional safety. When he chases validation, he creates pressure. This video matters because many men unknowingly train women how to treat them, by what they tolerate, how they react, and how quickly they give up their own needs. And once that pattern is set, it's hard to reverse. The central principle behind everything you're about to hear is simple but powerful. Never do anything with a woman that costs you your self-respect. Not in the name of love, not in the name of patience, not in the name of being a good guy. Self-respect is felt before it's spoken. It shapes how you walk away, how you say no, how you remain steady when emotions rise. The 5 things you're about to hear are not mistakes because they upset women. They're mistakes because they quietly teach a woman that you are willing to shrink yourself to be chosen. And desire never grows where self-respect disappears. Now we move into real work. The first thing men should never do with women is subtle, common, and incredibly destructive, and most men mistake it for loyalty. Here's the bold truth most men don't want to hear. The more you explain yourself to gain understanding, the less grounded you appear. Over-explaining doesn't come from clarity. It comes from fear of being misunderstood, rejected, or misjudged. Psychologically, attraction responds to emotional certainty. When a man feels solid in his decisions, he doesn't negotiate his reality. He communicates, then he stands still. But when you over-explain, you send a different signal. You say without words, "Please see me the way I want to be seen." That creates imbalance. A woman doesn't lose attraction because you spoke too much. She loses attraction because your words revealed inner instability. Think of the man who sends long messages trying to clarify his intentions. He explains why he didn't reply fast. Why did he say what he said? Why didn't he mean it that way? He believes he's mature. What she feels is pressure. Real-world example, you set a boundary. She reacts emotionally. Instead of staying calm, you defend, justify, and soften your position until the boundary disappears. At that moment, something shifts. Not because she won, but because she learned that your confidence collapses under emotional resistance. Here's what changes when you stop doing this. Your words become lighter. Your presence becomes heavier. You don't rush to be understood. You allow yourself to be felt. A grounded man trusts that the right woman will understand without persuasion. And if she doesn't, he doesn't panic. He stays steady. He stays respectful. he stays by himself. That steadiness is rare, and rarity creates attraction. Here's the hard statement most men need to hear. A man who chases emotional closure hands away his power. Emotional closure sounds healthy, it sounds mature, but when it's chased, not invited, it becomes a form of self-abandonment. Psychologically, closure must be mutual. When only one person needs it, the dynamic becomes uneven. Most men chase closure when a woman pulls back. They want clarity. They want reassurance. They want to just talk one last time. What they're really asking for is relief from uncertainty. But attraction doesn't grow in desperation for answers. It grows in comfort with the unknown. Real-world example. She becomes distant. Replies are slow. Energy shifts. Instead of observing calmly, you push for a conversation. You ask what changed. You ask if everything is okay. You ask if she still feels the same. You think you're being emotionally intelligent. What she experiences is emotional pressure. Here's the uncomfortable psychology. When you chase closure, you communicate that her emotional state controls yours. That doesn't make you vulnerable. It makes you reactive. And reactivity weakens polarity. Here's what changes when you stop doing this. You stop begging reality to explain itself. You let behavior speak louder than words. You trust yourself enough to walk away from confusion without needing permission. A strong man doesn't fear unanswered questions. He fears losing his self-respect more. When a woman wants connection, she moves toward clarity naturally. You don't force it. You don't extract it. You remain open, but not dependent. That calm detachment isn't cold. It's self-trust, and self-trust is felt immediately. Here's the bold truth. The moment you rearrange your life to prove your value, you lower it. Many men believe availability equals commitment. They think showing up instantly shows care. Psychologically, attraction responds to structure. A man with a grounded routine signals direction, discipline, and purpose. When you abandon that structure for someone new, you don't look generous. You look unanchored. Real-world example, you cancel the gym, you postpone work, you ignore your own plans just to be available. At first, she might appreciate it, but appreciation is not attraction. Over time, something subtle happens. You appear less centered, less driven, less solid, and the very things that made you appealing begin to fade. This isn't about being busy to look important, it's about respecting your own life. A man's routine is not a schedule, it's an identity. When you protect it, you communicate self-respect without saying a word. Here's the psychological shift. Women don't want to be the center of your life. They want to be invited into a life that already has a center. Here's what changes when you stop doing this. You stop seeking validation through availability. Your time becomes intentional, not reactive. When you choose her, it feels meaningful because it costs you something real. A grounded man doesn't disappear. He doesn't play games. He simply doesn't abandon himself to be chosen. And paradoxically, that's what makes him choose-worthy. Here's the statement that separates strong men from exhausted ones. Every time you tolerate disrespect, you teach someone how to treat you. Disrespect doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it's subtle, dismissive tone, broken promises, jokes that cross a line, inconsistency disguised as being busy. Psychologically, attraction requires clear boundaries. Not rigid rules, clear standards. When a man ignores disrespect to keep peace, he believes he's being patient. What he's actually doing is training himself to accept less. Real-world example, she cancels plans repeatedly, speaks sharply when emotional, push limits to see what you'll allow, you stay quiet, you rationalize, you tell yourself not to be too sensitive, but inside something erodes. Here's the deeper psychology. A woman doesn't feel safe with a man who can't protect his own boundaries. If you won't stand up for yourself, she subconsciously doubts you'll stand up for the relationship. Here's what changes when you stop doing this. Your presence becomes solid. Your words carry weight. You don't argue, you respond. You calmly address what's not okay. And if it continues, you create distance without drama. That restraint is powerful. A grounded man doesn't punish. He doesn't threaten. He simply removes access when respect disappears. That's not cold, that's clarity. And clarity builds attraction far more than silent tolerance ever will. Here's a truth that quietly ruins many men. If you sacrifice yourself to be valued, you will never feel valued. Sacrifice sounds noble. It sounds loving. It sounds mature. But when sacrifice is used to earn affection, it becomes self-betrayal. Psychologically, validation-seeking behavior signals low internal worth, not because sacrifice is bad, but because the motive behind it matters. A man who sacrifices from abundance chooses freely. A man who sacrifices from insecurity hopes to be rewarded. Women feel the difference instantly. Real-world example, you constantly put her needs before yours. You listen endlessly, but never speak. You give time, energy, support, while quietly hoping she'll finally choose you. You don't say it out loud, but it lives underneath every action. And that hidden expectation creates pressure. Here's the deeper psychology. Attraction fades when giving feels transactional, not because she's ungrateful, but because desire cannot grow where obligation is felt. When a man gives without honoring himself, he becomes invisible, reliable, predictable, emotionally flat. Here's what changes when you stop doing this. You give because you want to, not because you need something back. Your generosity becomes grounded, not desperate. You stop keeping score. A self-respecting man can walk away even after giving a lot, because his worth was never in what he gave. And paradoxically, that freedom makes his presence more valuable. Because the man who doesn't need validation is the man whose validation feels meaningful. Here's the quiet strength most men underestimate. If her emotions control your state, attraction slowly collapses. Emotional intelligence does not mean emotional absorption. Supporting a woman does not mean drowning with her. Psychologically, women test emotional safety, not consciously, but instinctively. They sense whether a man can remain grounded when emotions rise. When a man panics during her stress, when he becomes anxious during her silence, when her moods dictate his peace, he doesn't look caring, he looks unstable. Real-world example, she's upset but unclear. Her tone changes, energy shifts, you immediately feel tension, you rush to fix it, you over-apologize. You take responsibility for emotions that aren't yours. You believe you're being supportive. But what she feels is this: if I'm not okay, he isn't okay. That creates pressure, not closeness. Here's the deeper psychology. A woman relaxes emotionally when a man remains steady. Not cold, not distant. Steady. He listens without losing himself. He responds without absorbing chaos. Here's what changes when you stop doing this. You become an emotional anchor. Your calm invites her nervous system to settle. You don't need to control her emotions. You trust them to pass. A grounded man doesn't suppress feelings. He regulates himself, and that regulation is felt as strength. When you can sit in emotional intensity without reacting, defending, or collapsing, you become rare. And rarity creates attraction. Here is a truth that hurts, but heals. If a woman is only tolerating you, staying longer won't turn it into desire. Many men confuse patience with loyalty. They wait, they hope, they endure lukewarm energy, mixed signals, and half-effort, believing consistency will eventually be rewarded. Psychologically, attraction is not built through endurance. It's built through mutual investment. When a man stays where he isn't clearly wanted, he slowly erodes his own self-image, not all at once. Quietly, day by day. Real-world example. She rarely initiates. Plans feel uncertain. Affection comes only when convenient. You tell yourself she's just guarded. You believe time will change things, but deep down, you feel it. You are present, but not chosen. Here's the deeper psychology. A woman doesn't feel attraction for a man who negotiates his worth. When you accept crumbs, you communicate that you believe crumbs are all you deserve. And belief is contagious. Here's what changes when you stop doing this. You walk away from ambiguity without anger. You stop waiting for potential and start responding to reality. Your energy becomes clean. No resentment, no silent hoping. A self-respecting man doesn't demand desire. He creates space for it. And if it doesn't show up, he leaves with dignity. That departure is not punishment, it's alignment, because the man who chooses himself teaches others how to choose him too. Here is the final line most men cross without realizing it. The moment her response defines your worth, you lose yourself. This is the most dangerous mistake because it doesn't look dramatic. It looks quiet, internal, invisible. Psychologically, identity must be self-generated. When a man ties his confidence, mood, or sense of value to a woman's attention, He becomes externally anchored, and anything externally anchored can be shaken. Real world example, her texts are warm, you feel powerful. She goes quiet, you feel small. Her approval lifts you, her distance collapses you. Nothing about your life changed, only her response did. That's not a connection, that's emotional dependency. Here's the deeper psychology. A woman cannot desire a man who disappears inside her reactions. Not because she wants control, but because attraction requires two whole individuals, not one orbiting the other. When your identity bends to her moods, polarity vanishes. You stop being a man with direction, you become a mirror waiting for reflection. Here's what changes when you stop doing this. Your confidence stabilizes, your emotions slow down, you enjoy connection, but you don't cling to it. You stop asking, what does this mean about me? And start asking, does this align with my values? A grounded man appreciates interest without needing it. He feels disappointment without collapsing. He stays himself, regardless of outcome, and that inner independence is felt instantly. Because the man who knows who he is doesn't need to be chosen to feel complete. He already is. If you look closely, every mistake we talked about has the same root. Not lack of effort, not lack of care, but lack of self-alignment. Most men aren't weak. They're just disconnected from themselves while trying to connect with someone else. You were never meant to disappear inside the attraction. You were meant to stand inside it. When you stop over-explaining, you feel lighter. When you stop chasing closure, you feel steadier. When you protect your routine, you feel grounded. When you enforce boundaries, you feel clean inside. When you stop sacrificing for validation, you feel whole. When you remain calm in emotional storms, you feel powerful. When you leave tolerance behind, you feel dignified. When you anchor your identity in yourself, you feel free. This is what real confidence feels like. Not loud, not performative, but quiet and immovable. The transformation isn't about becoming colder with women, it's about becoming warmer with yourself. A man who respects himself doesn't need to announce it. It shows in how he listens without shrinking, how he gives without losing, how he walks away without bitterness. You stop asking women to complete you. You invite them to walk beside you. And here's the paradox most men never experience until it happens. When you no longer need attraction to feel worthy, you become more attractive. Because your energy is no longer seeking, it's choosing. You stop fearing loss because you know you can survive it. You stop clinging because you trust your own direction. You stop negotiating your standards because you understand their value. This changes more than dating. It changes how you speak, how you work, how you carry yourself in silence. You become harder to shake, harder to manipulate, harder to forget, not because you demand attention, but because your presence is complete, and the right woman doesn't feel pressured by that completeness. She feels safe inside it. She doesn't wonder where she stands. She senses it. This is what happens when a man stops asking, how do I keep her? And starts asking, how do I stay myself? That shift doesn't just change relationships. It changes the man. Here is the truth that stays with you long after this video ends. A man's power with women has nothing to do with control. It has everything to do with containment. The ability to contain your emotions, your standards, your identity. Most men are taught to chase connections. Very few are taught to hold themselves steady inside it. But the men who are remembered, the men who are respected, the men who are deeply desired, are not the ones who tried the hardest. They are the ones who never abandoned themselves. Every time you choose self-respect over approval, something in you strengthens. Every time you walk away from confusion, you gain clarity. Every time you remain calm when emotion pulls, you reclaim authority over your life. Women don't fall for perfection. They respond to presence, and presence comes from a man who knows where he begins and where he ends. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to be colder. You don't need to perform masculinity. You only need to stop betraying yourself in moments of fear. Because the moment you stop bending, you stop breaking. The right woman doesn't want a man who disappears for her. She wants a man who stands and invites her closer, and if she doesn't come, he doesn't collapse. He continues forward, with dignity, with direction, with peace. That is the man who attracts without chasing, who loves without losing, who walks away without regret. Not because he won the relationship, but because he never lost himself. Sit with that. Let it change how you move, how you speak, how you choose. Because once a man understands this, he never unknowingly gives his power away again.